Hello everybody, this is Pastor Green. We're doing another Bible study, Acts chapter 18. If you'd like me to come speak at your church, or if you have any questions, you can email me at godsohman@gmail.com. If you remember the last chapter, Acts 17, it ended, in verse 22, it said, "Then Paul stood in the midst of Mars Hill, and said, Ye men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you are too superstitious. For as I passed by and beheld your devotions, I found an altar to the subscription to the unknown God, whom therefore ye eagerly worship, him declare unto you." And like I said before, in Greece they had multiple different gods they prayed to for different things. And because they didn't want to forget anybody, they had an altar for an unknown God, just in case they forgot somebody, that could be his altar. And so Paul said, you got this altar to this unknown God because you're so superstitious. But I'm going to tell you about this unknown God. This God is Jesus. He's the creator of everything. And this is the picture of the hill. A lot of Greek people would actually meet on a hill, and they would basically speak to people, do different type of philosophies and things like that. Acts 18 verse 1. After these things, Paul departed from Athens and came to Corinth. And he found a certain Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, lately come from Italy, with his wife Priscilla, because that Claudius had commanded all the Jews to depart from Rome and come unto them. So you can see here the map. You can see what's going on here. Here's Athens. He's doing his journey right now. And here's Corinth. So you can see where Athens and Corinth is on the map. And because he was of the same craft, he abode with them and wrought. For their occupation they were tentmakers. And he reasoned with the synagogue every Sabbath and persuaded the Jews and the Greeks. Now, if you've been in the ministry, there's a thing called a tent ministry, and this is going after Paul in verse Acts of 18. And basically what it's saying is that the Bible basically says that pastors are supposed to be pastors as their full-time job. But unfortunately, sometimes you got to be what's called a tent maker, and you have to have some kind of a secular job or some kind of job outside the church to make money in order for you to do your missions, your evangelisms, your preachings and stuff like that. So when you work a job, it's called a tent ministry, where you basically are doing a secular job to make money, so then you can later go into your ministry, whether it be missionaries or evangelisms or whatever. And that's what's called tent maker. And so Paul stood with Aquila and Priscilla and made tents to make money so he can continue his missionary journey. And when Silas and Timothy were come to Macedonia, Paul was pressed in the Spirit and testified to the Jews that Jesus was Christ. There's actually multiple different prophecies of Jesus talking about Jesus as the Christ or the Messiah. I believe the Bible talks about 300 different prophecies about Jesus. Here's some more right here. Different prophecies and where it was fulfilled at. And like I said, that most scholars believe there's about 300 prophecies about Jesus in the Old Testament. It says these prophecies are specific enough that mathematical probability of Jesus fulfilling even a handful of them, let alone all of them, is staggering improbable if not impossible. And most of the scholars have said that it's possible to maybe fulfill about 5 of them. Each one of them would be very difficult, but they could probably mathematically accept about 5 of them. If anything more than 5 would just get almost improbable or impossible to do. And Jesus fulfilled all 300 of them. So the chances of that happen, it's just astronomical. And when they opposed themselves and blasphemed, he shook his raiment and said upon them, Your blood be upon your own heads. I am clean, for henceforth I will go into the Gentiles. And when he departed thence and entered to a certain man's house named Justus, one that worshipped God, whose house joined hard to the synagogue. And Crispus, the chief ruler of the synagogue, believed on the Lord with all his house. And many of the Corinthians believed hearing and were baptized. Then spoke the Lord to Paul in the night in vision, Be not afraid, but speak, and hold not to thy peace. For I am with thee. No man shall set on thee to hurt thee, for I have much people in the city. And they continued there 1 year and 6 months, teaching the word of God among them. And when Gallio was the deputy of the Jews, made a resurrection with one accord against Paul, and brought him to the judgment seat. So it says that Paul was in this town with Aquila and Priscilla for about a year and 6 months, so 1.5 years, making tents and making money for his ministry. And while he was there, he preached at the synagogues. There's the 100 accord right there, because they were all with one accord. In Isaiah 63, verse 3, it says, I have trodden the winepress alone, and of all the people there was none for me. For I will tread them in mine anger, and trample them in my fury. And there's your fury. Amos 1:14 says, But I will kindle a fire in the wall of Raham, and I shall devour the places thereof, where shine in the days of battle with a tempest, the day of the whirlwind. And there's your tempest. Back to Acts 18, verse 13. Saying, the fellow persuadeth men to worship God contrary to the law. And when Paul was not able to open his mouth, Gallio said to the Jews, If for a matter of wrong or wicked lawlessness, O ye Jews, reason would that I shall bear with you. But it be a question of words and names of all your law, look ye into it, for I will be no judge of such matter. And he drave them from the judgment seat. Then all the Greeks took Sosthenes, the chief ruler of the synagogue, and beat him before the judgment seat, and Gallio cared for none of these things. And people say, hold on a second. You said in verse 8, Crispus was the chief ruler of the synagogue. In verse 17, you're saying this guy, Sosthenes, is the chief ruler of the synagogue, so that must be a contradiction in the Bible. Well, the question is, who was the ruler? Crispus, the chief ruler of the synagogue, or Sosthenes, the chief ruler of the synagogue? And what I say to that is logical. There's two logical options. Corinth was a big town, so there's probably 2 or more synagogues. Or maybe there was a change of leadership. Maybe one was in charge, the other one was in charge later. Or maybe there was more than one ruler to take turns for the Bible study. So maybe, one guy preached 1 week, one guy preached the next week. All these things are possible. And Paul after the tarry there yet a good while, and when he took his leave of the brethren, and sailed thence to Syria, and with him Priscilla and Aquila, having showed his head with Cenchrea, for he has a vow. And he came unto Ephesus, and left them there, but he himself entered in the synagogue, and reasoned with the Jews. And when they desired him to tarry longer with them, he consented not. So you can see here on the map, here's Corinth, and there's Ephesus. So he went a long boat ride from Corinth to Ephesus. And you can see this, what a first century merchant ship would look like. It's about 350 miles by boat to get from Corinth to Ephesus. But bade them farewell, saying, I must by all means keep the feast that cometh in Jerusalem, but I will return again unto you, if God will. And he sailed to Ephesus. And when he landed at Caesarea, and gone up, and saluted the church, he went down to Antioch. And again, here's a map. Here's Ephesus, and there's Caesarea. That's a long boat ride. And then he went from Caesarea down to Antioch. 600 miles by boat from Ephesus to Caesarea. And a lot of people say, well, you said it was down to Antioch, but clearly that's north. But in biblical thinking, they talked about altitude. So going down to Antioch would be going downhill, not going down like south as we would think, but it's going down in altitude. There's Antioch there. And after he had spent some time there, and departed, and went over all the country of Galatia and Phrygia, in order to strengthen all the disciples. There's actually 2 Antiochs in the Bible. I don't know if you guys know that or not. But you have Antioch over here in Syria, and you have Antioch over here in Asia. Both of them are Antiochs in the Bible, so sometimes it gets confusing. And a certain Jew named Apollos, born in Alexandria, an eloquent man and mighty of the Scriptures, came to Ephesus. This man was instructed in the way of the Lord, and being fervent in the Spirit, he spoke and taught diligently the things of the Lord, knowing only the baptism of John. And he began to speak boldly of the synagogue, whom when Aquila and Priscilla had heard, they took him to them and expounded on him the way of God more perfectly. So this guy was really fervent and followed John the Baptist, but didn't know much else after that. So he went in the synagogue when he taught John the Baptist, and there's going to be a coming Messiah soon, and he's going to save us, and this is great. And Aquila and Priscilla took him aside and said, hey, you're not going to believe what's going to happen. The Messiah came. The people crucified him. They did all these different things. He was resurrected. He walked among us. Tell them all the good news of, what happened since then. And when he had disposed to pass to Asia, and brethren wrote, exhorting the disciples to receive him, whom when he was come, helped them much which had believed through grace. For he mightily conceived the Jews, and they publicly showed by the Scriptures that Jesus was Christ. So they basically convinced the Jews that, this person you crucified, he was the Christ. Well, guys, that's the video. I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, tell your friends all about it. Ask any kind of questions you got in the comments section, or you can email me. I'm going to put a couple videos on here so you can click other playlist if you want. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.